and shared prosperity. Firstly, allow me to take you through the format of today's 60-minute session. We will be discussing our topic in a panel format for about 50 minutes. Following that, there will be a 10-minute question and answer. You, the audience, will be able to post your questions using Slido. To participate, all you need to do is select Islamic Fintech for Inclusion and Shared Prosperity on the drop-down menu on the right side of your screen. You can then ask questions, vote for other questions, share ideas, and even interact with the polls. Towards the final 10 minutes of this session, I will be choosing your questions for the panelists. Let me now introduce you to our three esteemed panelists. Joining us today is Dr. Kinan Salim, who currently leads Islamic Digital Economy at INSEAF, where he works with the stakeholders in Islamic Fintech ecosystem to advocate for Islamic Fintech. He is also the project lead of iConnect Fintech in Islamic finance in INSEAF, an industry-led collaborative network that is positioned to create and nurture a conducive innovation system in Malaysia for Fintech in Islamic finance. Dr. Kinan has 15 years of experience in Islamic finance, sustainable finance, and fintech. Dr. Kinan, a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Next, we are pleased to welcome Noor Sharain Abdul Rashid, or warmly known as Ain, the APAC regional head for launchgood.com, the world's largest faith-based crowdfunding platform that has helped fundraising campaigns raised over $260 million across 150 countries. With its headquarters in the US, Ain and her teammates have successfully grown LaunchGood in the Asia Pacific region. Now she has coached hundreds of crowdfunding campaigns globally and wishes to share more inspiring stories from this region to the rest of the world. Ain, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
The final member of our panel of experts is Dr. Farouk Habib, the co-founder of Alif Technologies in Dubai and Sharia Experts London. Dr. Farouk is an expert in fintech, finance, and Sharia. He is an advisor, consultant, trainer, lecturer, and product developer with a vast global experience of more than 8 years. He is involved in various projects under Islamic Fintech and the halal digital economy. He has also developed his own proprietary Sharia compliance screening criteria for crypto assets. Dr. Farouk was previously a researcher and advisor at ISRA, an institute under the Central Bank of Malaysia. He is also the editor and reviewer of various reputable academic journals. Please join me to welcome Dr. Farouk to this conference.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you once again to all the esteemed panelists. I certainly am looking forward to getting your valuable insights on this topic. So we will start. Let's talk about COVID-19 recovery. It has, COVID-19 as the pandemic has undoubtedly affected large sections of the global economy. On the local scale, we have seen many struggling to keep afloat, not only financially, but physically and mentally as well. While the crisis has created immense human suffering, it has also sparked worldwide action from institutions and people eager to help. Now, I believe the recovery post-COVID will most likely be uneven. What was exacerbated during the crisis, like poverty and income gap, need to be sustainably recovered. And Islamic financial institutions are going to play a key role as it played during the recovery post-financial crisis of 2008. Islamic finance is the only financial system in the world, the principles of which are based on ethics and morality. It is the financial system which ensures community participation, social and economic stability, promotes financial inclusion, and supports and encourages comprehensive human development. So with the theme of recovery post-COVID-19, my first question to Ms. Ain, what are the trends, risks, and opportunities do you see for nations and communities as we transition out of pandemic into recovery?
Thank you so much. I guess ladies first, huh? Yeah, before I go into that, I would like to, introduce what launch good is, because then you'll understand where my perspective come from. So as I share more ideas and solutions. So LaunchGood, as mentioned earlier, it's a crowdfunding platform where we allow people to raise funds on our platform, and we're very focused on donation and reward-based crowdfunding platform. So meaning that if you know Kickstarter, if you know GoFundMe, so it's like a combination of both of those platforms, but for Muslims, yeah. When the pandemic hit, we could see like a lot of changes. Alhamdulillah, how we work, the way we work has always been, remotely and virtually. So we didn't really have to face, the issue with, restructuring and, how to do things and moving things on the platform, because we've already done that even before COVID. But the increase in demand of raising funds, a lot of people got affected during the pandemic for sure. So we had to adjust to that. Suddenly there's, huge increase. A lot of people wanted transition from offline donations for offline fundraising into online fundraising platform. So that's where we say to ourselves, like, okay, I think this is where our responsibility should come, where we provide like a COVID relief incentives. And I see that also happen to other platforms, other fintech providers as well, where they provide like COVID relief. For example, like what we did, where we provided resources, we provide like, one-to-one consultation for the ones who need help with like how can they transition that, from offline to online. For example, like mosque, they were so used to receiving donations every Friday, but they couldn't do that during the pandemic. So they forced themselves, to be online. Where also we promoted the product Friday Givers, where every Friday we encourage people to donate online. So Alhamdulillah, we launched what we call Outsmart Corona, where we put all the initiatives and resources for them to be, to get everything online. So when we look at other platforms, other fintech providers, they also have, all these incentives. For example, like Facebook also came up with incentive, Google, we also came up with incentives for, SMEs, and other also have that they feel their responsibility to respond to that. For example, like fees. So some platforms, they waive fees. We even did that as well. So we promoted 0% platform service fees for the ones who got affected. But Alhamdulillah, because of that, we decided to just keep that. And then, even post-pandemic, we still continue with, providing 0% platform fees to our users. Alhamdulillah, COVID made us think to provide that, that sort of incentive, and now we just, just feel that we should continue doing that. And also, like, we see that some fintech companies also introduce like a charitable giving feature in response to COVID. I think that is going to continue. We also see banks that when we do like transactions through online banking, there's a feature like at the bottom say that, would you like to support like COVID relief efforts? Or why don't you like, donate and things like that. So there's some form of like, charitable giving feature on those platforms, even e-commerce websites. We could see that, okay, if you purchase certain stuff, why don't like a portion of this go to COVID relief? And I think that is going to continue even post-COVID. I mean, they see that, this is the role that they play in the community, not only during COVID, but also post-COVID. And suddenly the level of trust that we have in using things online, even fintech products, has increased. Like people were very reluctant before COVID. And now people are like accustomed to using those products or have more trust into it. But of course, not all layers of community are comfortable. There's still some, untapped market out there that we need to really think of, like how should we gain that trust. But yeah, trust in using these products for sure has increased. Digital payments, it's everywhere now. I've been using, all these e-wallets before COVID, but now I'm using it even more. Like I couldn't remember when was the last time I went to the ATM and then take my cash out. I've been using cards and e-wallets, and even like the before COVID, we didn't really think of like getting the elderly to use digital payments, but now because of COVID and because of prolonged social distance, somehow um, you know we have increased in that market area where they learn how to use it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
force themselves how to use it. Like contactless payments, it becomes like a need where suddenly all these paper money becomes very filthy and you're exposed to certain viruses, and then it was a good thing in a way. There's a hikmah behind that when that happened, right? Suddenly people go online, people do
I
groceries on.
really, yeah, I really like the tagline "Outsmart Corona," and I think yeah, going offline. So mosques have had to immediately go offline to online, and I think definitely that's here to stay. And you mentioned the charitable giving feature. So yeah, when I go into e-commerce portals or even the delivery food delivery portals, there's always the option, do I want to donate to the rider, or do I want to donate to a cause? So yes, I think that is going to stay. So maybe we can segue to Dr. Kinan about specifically how can Islamic finance address post-COVID-19 recovery.
Thank you, Farila. So first, before looking what Islamic finance can do, we need to actually evaluate what is the current status after the COVID. So you can see what's happened already. The poverty has been increased. Human development, actually, it has been stopped. Many people, many students, many kids, they didn't go to school in the last 2 years. Training programs was stopped. Many people with increasing mental issues because of the lockdown and all those things. Health issues there. Of course, some people, they pass away, but then many people also, they affected with maybe forever kind of illnesses with them. Job losses have been there. Many people lost their jobs. Their income has been decreased. And from financial perspective, all those factors, it increased the indebtedness of the people. So people becoming more in debt, and they have less possibility or opportunity actually to pay back their debts. So putting all these things in mind, actually, this is where Islamic finance need to play a pivotal role in addressing these issues. Now, how I can see this, I can see that there are solutions should be on the short term, there are solutions should be on the long term. So when we talk about short term, this is to address and to provide support to the basic needs of the people who needs the food, people who needs the education, people who needs the healthcare, which is a lot of people actually in most of the countries, not just in one country. So how to address these issues of the people in the short term? And why it's short term? Because this is basic needs. If you don't address it immediately, it will be reflected very badly in the whole society. So this is where we need such kind of solutions. Of course, we have in Islamic finance, the Islamic social finance tools like zakat, like sadaqah, like waqf. These tools have been there for a long time, but how to activate these tools to address this issue? How to make these tools more efficient, more effectiveness, and more impactful, and try to reduce the waste, try to reduce the bureaucracy, try to reduce the time being from the donors until the final recipients or final beneficiary. So I believe this is one of the main issues that Islamic finance need to address, and Islamic finance can address. And of course, here when we talk about Islamic finance, we are not just talking about Islamic banks. Islamic finance is much bigger than Islamic banks. You have Islamic banks, the capital company, you have Islamic capital market, shares, sukuk, you have Islamic social finance, waqf institutions, zakat institution. So there are a lot of tools and a lot of institutions. They can work together, collaborate to help and to support to those issues. Now, if you look at the medium and the long term, and this is actually some of the lessons that we may need to learn from this pandemic. Basically, what's happened in the pandemic, again, those people who are vulnerable, they hit the most by the pandemic. And this is where we need to redesign or we need to incentivize a new financial tools, more resilient financial tools, support those people. Now, if you look, who are the most economic sector or institutions that have been affected by COVID? Actually, those are the micro and small enterprises, right? MSMEs. Those are the most have been affected by this pandemic. And then one of the things why they have been affected because they already are indebted, and then when they get a loss of their income, a loss of the business, they just see the debt there and they cannot pay back. Yes, financial institutions they try to support by giving, for example, moratorium, 6 months, 9 months, but then again now the 6 month has been ended, the 9th month has been ended. So what to do? You have more debt after 6 months, more debt after 9 months, and really you cannot see the economic opportunity is there to recover or to grow up and then to pay back those debts. So this is a lesson for the whole financial system, how to innovate and how to build a new resilient financial tools, how to build more equity financing tools, more equity crowdfunding tools, how you can capitalize on technology and digitalization to address the issues of, for example, information asymmetry, moral hazard that in general in equity finance, how you can capitalize on digitalization and fintech to address this issue and provide these tools even for the MSMEs.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kinan. I think um, you are right in pointing out that the hardest hit are the micro businesses. Um, but the opportunities that would be availed to them during this recovery can also be big. And that would be able to then fill bridge, the indebtedness that they had from before. But how can financial institutions, how can the industry actually support this recovery by creating new business models and maybe financial models? Thank you, Dr. Kinan. Let me now turn to Dr. Farouk. What do you see as the role of Islamic fintechs in this recovery landscape?
It's a very good question, actually. So if we look at the Islamic fintech landscape currently, so you can see that like it's expanding in all directions. For example, like Islamic fintech in the sector of payments, takaful, capital market, wealth management, money transfer and remittances, personal finance, regulation, regulatory tech, and then blockchain, crypto, and financing sites, they are all expanding. And now we are also seeing so many convergence rather than competition between the traditional Islamic financial institutions and the fintech startups. So because of that, we see a good synergy there. Unfortunately, due to pandemic, we have seen a lot of damage in the sense because if you look at the Islamic fintech funding and uh, and uh, and uh, and the investments, then you would see that like they are already the scale is overall has fallen to 2017 level. So because of that, we see we were expecting that there will be turbulence in the year 2021 because when pandemic started in early 2020, we have already observed that Islamic fintech funding and investments are shrinking. But right now, I see an opportunity here because although the demand and potential is huge, but the fundings and investments have fallen to the 2017 levels. Because of that, I think that there would be a jump in the at the end of 2021. We are already in the last quarter of 2021, but in 2022, it will be a good year in terms of recovery and again robustness. But conceptually, if you look at Islamic fintech, you would see that Islamic fintech is a win-win situation, is a very strong phenomena in the sense that it is not only superior in terms of ethical and social values from conventional finance and fintech, but also it is superior in terms of the technological advancement from traditional Islamic finance industry. And that is why I think Dr. Kinan has also indicated that we really need more digital transformation and digital transformation and digitalization, not only in through coming through Islamic fintech startups, but we are also observing that open banking globally and other landscapes are changing. For example, crowdfunding platforms for equity financing, for charity financing, and for other forms of financing. We have seen a boom of that. Uh, Again, the thing is, Waqf, charity, and philanthropic sector is still, I think that it's still underperforming because it has huge potential. But at the moment, we haven't realized and we haven't materialized its full potential. So that is why we are seeing that a lot of potential is there, and we can basically increase the post-pandemic recovery pace with utilizing this sector effectively. Uh, Last thing I would like to say is that basically is that is in Islamic fintech. Right now, what I see is that a lot of regulations and legislations are geographically dependent because there are several noteworthy developments and around the world. For example, like regulators are becoming more amenable to fintech companies acquiring bank charters, as we have seen with the Lending Club and also Square. So like what we see is like fintech companies, even in the Islamic fintech arena, we can see that Risk is coming, Tayyab, Insha Bank, and then we also have seen other fintech startups acquiring bank licenses and bank charters. And secondly, what we are watching global digital currency and stable cryptocurrency regulations also to see how crypto can play out in this post-pandemic era. And we are also keeping an eye on global open banking regulations and their impact on the Islamic fintech startups. So I think that the regulations will play a lot of role in the coming year.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk. I mean, I think in Malaysia itself, regulators being, the bank side as well as the capital market sides have been, largely supportive of creating regulations that have parity and proportionality. I liked what you mentioned about the philanthropic funds. So I think one of the areas of opportunity for inclusion is the role of Islamic finance and fintechs in galvanizing and mobilizing this multi-billion dollar Islamic social finance pool from zakat, from sadaqah, from wakaf. According to UNDP in 2018, zakat can potentially contribute 200 billion to 1 trillion US dollars globally towards poverty alleviation. So let me pose the first question to Dr. Kinan. Where do you see the differentiating opportunities are for Islamic fintechs in promoting inclusion?
Okay, so basically, I just want to comment on what Dr. Farouk has mentioned about open banking. So open banking is very related actually to this question, how the fintech can promote the inclusion. And the main idea here about open banking is not about the technology, but it's about creating the platform for cooperation. And I think this is the name of the game when it comes to the financial inclusion. It's the cooperation between financial institution, Islamic banks, between the Islamic fintech company, between the Waqf and Zakat institution, to build the platform where those institutions together can play together, can collaborate to address the financial inclusion. Now, if you look at the financial inclusion itself, of course, it's a big issue. Like in Malaysia itself, there are more than 2 million people where they don't have credit scoring, for example. And the moment you don't have credit scoring, you may not be able to get financing, or you will get financing at a very high rate. So you are financially excluded, right? And this is in Malaysia. Globally, the problem is worse, actually. Why financial this exclusion is there? What is the problem? Actually, there's problem from both sides, from the supply side and from the demand side. From the supply side, financial institutions are not able to provide profitable products and profitable solutions for the excluded segments. And that's the main reason why they don't provide this. And at the demand side, when of course there is this the literacy, we talk about the literacy, financial literacy, digital literacy from, for example, from the B40 or from the excluded segments. So both components actually they are increasing the financial exclusion. Now, how fintech, how this collaboration can promote the inclusion? You look at this, who is able actually to support or provide solutions for the excluded people? Mainly, it is the Islamic social finance institution. This is where the Zakat institution, this is where the Waqf institution, they can provide financial institutions for those people, right? More than the Islamic financial institution like banks. Now, most of the work of the Zakat institution, Waqf institution, being manual, more on physical relationship, those kind of things. So now they are starting to go for the digitalization. But you can accelerate this and by collaboration. So this is the main idea when you bring together, for example, the Zakat institution, Waqf institution with the Islamic Fintech institution. The Islamic Fintech will be able to digitalize and to accelerate the access of those beneficiaries who are excluded from financial system to those Islamic social finance institution. And by building this, so you can just give a very simple example. Let's talk about Qard Hasan, for example, benevolent loan coming from a Waqf institution or Zakat institution to the beneficiary, and then the beneficiary, he can be paying back, for example, in 6 months or 1 year. So you are creating the credit history, you are creating the data for this beneficiary, and then this beneficiary will be able actually to get more financial solutions now from the Islamic financial institutions. So one of the differentiation opportunity is this collaboration between Islamic financial institutions, Bank Takaful, Islamic social finance institutions, Zakat, Sadaqa, Waqf, and the Islamic Fintech startup. Now, the other thing is how to create this alternative data. So one way, of course, that okay, you create these solutions for them, but we need to go beyond this. Can for example, we find those Islamic fintech startup? They provide alternative data for the customers, psychometric data, social media data, transaction data for the customers. Fortunately, we already have those kind. There are some of the Islamic fintech startup. They are building this database. They are starting to collaborate with the Islamic banks and with the Islamic social finance institution to create this. And this is definitely will increase the inclusion. And I believe this is one of the differentiating opportunity for the Islamic fintech, not just for the Islamic banks, but also for the Islamic fintech startup, such as crowdfunding and P2P.
Yep. I totally believe in what you say, because I am also of the opinion that innovation happens when you can find the right unit economics to serve a target segment that is not yours. So speaking from a bank's perspective, right? So you mentioned about those segments that are not being served by the banks today, because generally most organizations continuously improve on how to serve their profitable customers. But I do believe that innovation can only happen when you look at the customers who are not your customers, who are not traditionally your segment. So thank you for that, Dr. Kinan. If we can hear from Ms. Ain, so we heard about the opportunities, but in your view, what are some of the challenges of Islamic fintechs to increase financial inclusion?
Well, I guess, Dr. Kina have also mentioned that, we have challenges with how do we still make this profitable, because, a lot of fintech now are thinking like, okay, now I'm serving, certain beneficiaries, and how we gonna, support that. We have to make we have to think of like the cost, right? How do we make this cheaper, faster and easier for the users out there? Like transaction costs should be cheaper. And I just found out about Facebook's latest product, Novi. So they want to do all these digital payments, right? Where they want to help with certain group of people, how they're gonna receive money quickly, and then zero cost. They introduce zero cost, no cost at doing transactions, no cost even putting your money into the wallet. So all of us are thinking of that, like, okay, how do we make this free or very cheap for the users. But then we come to a challenge where, like, how do we still make margin? Like, is this going to be like a low margin for the fintech companies who provide this sort of services? And then we have to think of, like, what's a sustainable business model behind this? Yeah, since like we provide zero fees, zero platform service fees, we also have to think of, like, okay, what's a model that is sustainable. So again, challenge, as mentioned by Dr. Kinan, the financial literacy, it's still a challenge before COVID, during COVID, post-COVID. So because we have so many products out there and more products are coming, but financial literacy is still a challenge. Like, we have all these products, but how do we communicate to the users, like, okay, you need this product, this will help you. So how do we communicate that direct to the users? And some of the products, they use English, most of them, but we need to address, like, in their language, local language. And it seems that is not, it's still a challenge to some of the fintech providers. And these users, sometimes they have negative perception towards financial institutions. They feel like, it is not accessible to them. They feel that, it will create like high cost transactions, things like that. So yeah, how do we communicate that to them? Like, okay, we're helping. So another thing is that, for example, like, I'm not sure if you've heard of, like, how GoGet help their go-getters. So GoGet is a platform where they provide like gig jobs, right? Cleaners and things like that. So they realize that the go-getters, the gig workers, they do not have like a good financial literacy. So what they do is that they collaborate with another platform called Pod. Yeah, so another platform called Pod. So GoGet, collaborate with Pod, where these go-getters, whatever that they earn, they get to save some of the portion into another app called Pod. So in a way, they teach the go-getters like how you should save, like why is it needed? Because now we are serving a lot of gig workers where they sometimes rely on their income, like solely on their income. But what comes after that? Like, what's the retirement plan from that? Why is insurance or other investment is needed? Of course, that's going to take a long time for us to educate the community on that part. But we're getting there, inshallah. We're getting there. And also, again, unbanked and underbanked population, it's still there. It's still high. The reason being, like, some of them, they do not have, some form of formal identification documents and things like that. Because once they have like a formal identification documents, then they have access to banking facilities for sure. But a lot of fintech now are thinking like, how do we address that? How do we overcome that? So inshallah, soon we'll see more ideas coming out. Yeah.
I think the major theme here that I'm hearing from Dr. Kinan as well as Ain is the collaboration and the cooperation, and it's excellent that you actually mentioned Pod, because Bank Islam is also collaborating with Pod to look at how we are able to serve the needs of the gig workers, because they are. As you know, I mean, their income, the income level of the freelance and the gig workers are not fixed. They don't have a payslip like an employee, but that doesn't mean that they don't qualify for the financial solutions. Thank you for that, Ain. And so to Dr. Farouk, what do you see as the role of government in promoting a healthy Islamic fintech ecosystem so they can drive financial inclusion? Because Ain just now mentioned that one of the challenges is also profitability. And then creating literacy. Over to you, Dr. Farouk.
Yes, that's a very good question. I think that in these type of phenomena, we always need government help because governments can be seen as large organizations with a lot of resources and a lot of decision-making power. So because of that, I really see that the governments can actually play a huge role in increasing financial inclusion. But I think that before that, we need to also understand the demographics of what financial inclusion we target audience or the target customer or clientele of financial inclusion first, and then what are at our hand we have as technology or enablers or technical advancements. So, for example, like if you look at the demographics, we have agri laborers, we have women, we have micro, small, and medium enterprises, and small time entrepreneurs, migrants, domestic help, micro establishment, small entrepreneurs also. So these are basically the demographic we are targeting as for financial inclusion, and most of them are in the underdeveloped countries. And if you look at the OIC countries, which are 57 member countries, most of them are either underdeveloped or developing countries. Very few of them are actually developed countries. So I think that it means that we have a very large population as Muslims and Muslim residing in the Muslim countries, and then we have to increase the financial inclusion through technology. So then we move towards that what technology we have in our hands. For example, like digital identity, biometric ID, we have cloud services, we have mobile money and e-wallets, we have crowdfunding platforms, and we can also utilize alternative credit scoring, cross-border remittances, digital KYC processes, RegTech, blockchain, etc. These are basically the technologies and the processes which can help us in elevating the level of financial inclusion. But most importantly, I think that to do that, the governments need to utilize some tools which are already available as Islamic social and philanthropic models for short term, medium term, and long term. For example, like of course, like you have mentioned, that zakat is actually according to a survey is very huge. It's almost half a billion every year, half a trillion, sorry. And then even if you look at the Waqf assets, so these are already surpassing $1 trillion asset worth in the whole world globally. But most of them are being underutilized. For example, one study says that Waqf, which is already Waqf assets and land, which are already more than $1 trillion in globally, 95% of them are being underutilized. So you can imagine that it's basically a miss, a huge miss. So how can we basically utilize those tools? Even like governments can utilize those tools to increase the financial inclusion. For example, like zakat, we can use data analytics, also artificial intelligence, to see that how zakat can be utilized in the most efficient manner. Not only that, like Qard Hassan is also there, and we can increase the transparency and traceability through blockchain. We can automate the processes through smart contracts. For Sadaqah also, even like people are talking about P2P financing and P2P charity, but I would go beyond that. My idea is actually to implement a social ranking and social rating system. So, for example, like people can actually vote in a very transparent and a P2P manner without any influence of third parties. That which area, which segment of the society, and which part of the world should get sadaqah more, for example. So we can have a global system where people can rank, people can rate in the P2P platform. So the most crucial and most urgent tasks, and also areas. So this is basically in the short term we can do. In the medium term, of course, like we need to have crowdfunding platforms, P2P financing, and fintech-based startups. These based on mudaraba, musharaka, and other modes of Islamic contracts, so that like we can utilize them in the medium term. And then in the long term, I think that social sukuk, fintech based, sukuk can also be in tokenized basically. So what you are trying to do is like not only having a very powerful tool from the Islamic finance, that is social sukuk, but you are also coupling it with the power of blockchain through tokenization for SMEs. So this is basically one thing. Then you can also put Waqf on blockchain, because the reason why 95% of the Waqf assets at the moment are being underutilized is because of mismanagement, because of lack of transparency and traceability. So I think that blockchain can come in as to increase as a tool to increase transparency and traceability. And on the other hand, we can create decentralized autonomous organizations which are global, which are decentralized and distributed, and they can actually those organizations can be global and managing the work of efficiently. So that can be also done. So I think that these are the things which we need to focus, and governments can surely increase the financial inclusion through these means.
This is a nice shoe into the next topic, which is actually technology, Dr. Farouk. And so, within this century itself, technology and automation have always been a key part of the global financial service industries, right? Bank mainframe computer networks, ATMs, digital stock exchanges, these are examples of the earlier financial services technologies. The recent fintech revolution, however, is resulting in a disruptive change of the financial services led by new breed of technology enablers, which you had mentioned just now a little bit. So this disruption is reshaping financial services business models, operating models, and customer experiences, opening up new avenues of serving the world's evolving financial needs. So is there probably anything else that you would like to deep dive a little bit, Dr. Farouk, in terms of the key technology enablers? Because I think you've touched on quite a varied technology just now. Is there
Yes.
anything that you want to deep dive on?
Yeah, so actually, even if you look at open banking, Dr. Kiran has also mentioned about it. So big data analytics, open banking, it's not about basically having banking only, but it's open banking means through APIs, you can share huge data and seamless experience can be provided to the customers. So that is something which open banking is opting for. For example, previously the mindset was that I am a financial institution, I need to have my own products. So like my mindset was basically, if I have very beautiful and perfect products, I will be able to attract customers, right? So that was the mindset. And for that, you need to own things basically. So like, for example, you have buildings, and you have, buildings in the sense that you have huge offices, you have huge resources, you have big teams actually to do that. Right now, if you take an example of Orange Bank, or Citi and Barclays also have started creating their own whole environment and universe of APIs. So what they are trying to offer through this technology and through this enabler is that you do not need to own it. You do not need to own any product. You do not need to focus on the product itself. Like what you need to do is like you need to basically divert your focus from the product to the customer. So it will become customer centric approach, number one. Number two, then you do not need to own any product. So what you are trying to do is basically you are just assembling and combining different types of services, different types of products, which already others have already perfected in that. So what you need to do is you repackage them and you create customize them in a very highly efficient manner, so that like the customer can have a very good experience, and it will the customer will also have a very customized product. So this basically I think these are types of enablers we are looking at. For like example, like open APIs, we are looking at data analytics. Social media is very powerful now, so it does not only give you quantitative data, but about qualitative data, and that can be converted into quantitative data as well. So it's a huge data now, and we have resources to basically transform that data into information, and through that information we can have good knowledge about our customers, about even like what last night what they eat, whom did they meet, for example, which song they are listening to. So I mean, these are basically the type of data we can easily have now.
Yep.
So this is another thing. And of course, blockchain has been there for a decade now. We have already realized the power of blockchain, but I think that due to pandemic, what happened is like overall technology funding, and like I said before, was halted in back into 2020. But now we see that a constant recovery of 5%. Even this is true for Islamic finance industry as a whole as well. And for Islamic fintech, they will basically will show a stronger recovery. For example, it will be more than 5%. I am assuming it will be at least 10% in 2022. So I think that these type of enablers we are looking at, and they are pretty much coming back with much stronger potential.
Yep. I think the open banking discussion, which is about creating access to customers and potential customers, not just through, so I'm speaking from a bank's perspective, right? Not just through the branches, but through whatever channels that are available that may not even belong to the banks. And open banking, there are also opportunities arising from the fact that now that data can be shared, of course, with consent. How do you then protect the data? Because a bank, we are in the business of trust, and it's not just about your financial transactions and your funds that you keep with the bank. It's also about your personal data, your transactions, and so that also gives rise to opportunities of how we can secure and protect the customers in a holistic manner. So moving on to Ms. Ain, which technological trend or development would Islamic fintech entrepreneurs need to look out for in the next 3 to 5 years, you think?
Since early on you did just now, Dr. Farag, and also you mentioned about open banking and open API, things like that, and we are sharing data everywhere right now. So of course we should focus on, because now a lot of fintechs continue to create products that are more accessible and cheaper and faster and things like that, but also attention need to be given to securities, data securities especially. Like in our platform, we follow the GDPR policy and things like that. So locally we have PDPA and things like that. And it's interesting that in the future soon we'll have another policy where they call it DORA. It's a Digital Operational Resilience Act, where the EU Council, they have proposed this. I think it was like end of last year. And it's interesting that now they're going to come up with a standardized regulatory framework where all these financial services can follow one standard, and then also it's interesting that because of pandemic, now they're putting into how do we make this more resilient, like how our financial services can still follow this regulatory framework, and also how to be resilient in the coming years, and also this disaster recovery plans also being considered in that framework. I haven't looked into detail yet, but that's going to be exciting, inshallah, because we are really going to need to do the data privacy part and things like that. And also, like partnership opportunities growing, inshallah, because now we are looking into the potential of holistic financial services, like how do we integrate consumers with other financial needs and behaviors, and from integrating, then how do we together scale that globally. So that's going to be exciting in the coming years. Now it's no more about you doing your thing. I have something that I can offer you, and you have something that we can together collaborate and get users to use the products and integrate them. Now we have people doing super apps where they integrate payment services to the services available on the super app. So now, more collaboration. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. Like we never thought like certain companies would come up with a super app and then they, integrate payment services in there. For example, like AirAsia, they have been, having this idea of having a super app for so long, and COVID just like really pushed them to do that with their big pay and things like that. So yeah, like integrating a lot of providers into that app. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Thank you, Ain. Dr. Kinan, you, I think, interact with fintechs on a daily basis, right in the midst of them. What are your thoughts on the future opportunities in the Islamic fintech industry as a whole? In which area do you see the most promising growth opportunities lie in?
Okay, so basically, I would say all the verticals or of Islamic fintechs they have a very big potential. Like just for example, if you see in the last few years, actually alternative financing, crowdfunding, P2P, those are the main developing or the main growing sector in Islamic fintech. But still, I believe there are a lot of opportunities in these sectors. So because how many, for example, crowdfunding we have, 2, 10, 20, 30. If you look at the gap in the market for the SME, the funding gap, it's very huge. You can have 10x more, 100x more companies over all the Islamic world. So, and that's for all the Islamic fintech verticals. So from my perspective, all verticals of Islamic fintechs, they have a very big potential. But I want to focus on another thing. Now, while the solutions that Islamic fintech provide, some of them they are similar to what conventional fintech provide, but they are Sharia compliant. They are unique opportunities for Islamic fintech to grow. And here I will mention 3 of the unique opportunities for them. First, blended finance, where you blend commercial financing with the social financing. This is unique for Islamic fintech because you already have the unique institutions like zakat and sadaqah. Second, we talk about impact investment. Impact investment means that the investment that create a social and environmental impact. And I would say this is unique for fintech, not because of the application, but because when we talk about Islamic finance, this is something in the core of the Islamic finance to create an impact for the people in the core of the Maqasid Sharia. From this perspective, this is unique for Islamic fintech because you already have the driving force actually to apply impact investment. And the third part, which is unique for Islamic finance and Islamic fintech, actually the Sharia-based decision-making solutions. As I mentioned in the beginning, in general, while all the banking system being digitalized, the mechanism of the Sharia decision is not there yet. It's still manual. And this is a big opportunity for Islamic fintech to create some kind of automation for the Sharia auditing, automation for the Sharia advisory, and create the tools that help Sharia advisors, Sharia auditors, and Sharia community members to not just to monitor or to audit the Sharia transaction, but also to innovate and to develop a new product in the market.
All right. Thank you very much. We are now in the final 10 minutes of this session, and I'd like to choose some questions from the audience. I'm looking at Slido now. The most popular question is on that has 5 votes. Is to do with how can Islamic finance play a part in enabling struggling entrepreneurs and small businesses recovering from the pandemic? Maybe Dr. Farouk, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question, and I think that the whole our discussion basically was surrounding this topic actually. So let me just summarize the whole discussion. Is that Islamic fintech? If you look at them right now, they have social values on one hand and technology on the other, and they are combining them. This is basically an explosive mix. And what I see is that with this strong social and ethical background and technology at their front end, we can basically provide good solutions. And I think that a big role will be played also by sandboxes regulatory environment and legal framework. Uh, and then the second big role will be played by startups. So the mindset needs to be changed. Like, that previously I have been talking to many startups, and many young entrepreneurs. They say that the most important thing for them to overcome is their own mindset. That previously they have been thinking that, okay, you need a lot of money to start a business, right? And then I told them you do not need any kind of money at all. I mean, you just need to have a will, you need to have an idea. A good team will attract finances right now, because from my experience, I have seen that a lot of good teams have already attracted millions of dollars. So because of why? Because they had the talent, they had a good team, and they had a good idea. Even the good idea basically comes after. A good team is basically the topmost deciding factor, basically, we can say, is because if there is a good team and there is a problem with the idea, they can fix it, but they will find their own way. So that is basically a market perception. And right now, I can tell you from my personal experience, because I have been involved in so many projects at the moment, that there is a lot of money there. In fact, like some of the projects I am advising, they have already said to their investors that slashing out their allocation, saying that, okay, we cannot give you that much, and we have to slash you out. So this is basically right now happening. So what I can see is that as SMEs and small entrepreneurs can benefit from Islamic fintech, because there is a huge market, commercially viable also, and there is a huge potential.
Does anyone else want to contribute to this question?
Yeah, if I may add, also it comes to the holistic approach that the Islamic finance institutions, Islamic fintech, they can do. Like for example, the banks right now, you have those MSMEs, they are struggling. So what is your next step? You may give them more moratorium, okay, that's fine. But how to help them? You know that they may need to change their mindset. How you help them to change their mindset? Are you able to provide them, for example, a capacity building program for them? Maybe their problem, they are very good, but they don't have access to market. Are the banks able to help them to get access to the market? So those kind of solution which goes beyond not just the financial institution, help or support, but the financial and the non-financial support from the Islamic finance institutions.
Yeah, and I think just now when you spoke about blended finance, that could also be very relevant to this market, right? So combining the equity crowdfunding funding with the debt type of financing as well can be very powerful.
Exactly.
The second question that is interesting is from Augustine. Previously, it was mentioned that the demand side has an issue of financial literacy. So I think that came from Dr. Kinan. Okay. However, how do we mitigate defaults on payments? Any takers for this question? So the demand side, some of the challenges that the financial literacy. So how do financial institutions mitigate defaults on payments if this is an issue in the industry?
I think that, of course, there is a lack of awareness at the moment, and we can increase it, because even from the Islamic perspective, first of all, Islam does not encourage you to take unnecessary debt. So people should need to be aware of this fact, that on some instances, like Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself discouraged it a lot. Although, like at some point in time, he also took loan from other people, but out of necessity. But there were some other companions of the Prophet who were taking loans, and those were business loans. They were not personal loans. So what we see is basically Islam is quite sensitive about it, that how you are taking loans and how you repay them. And then Islam is also very sensitive and cautious about human dignity at the and also this fraud. So these are two different things. So like fraud can be imposed by the borrower to the lender, and a lender can actually harm human dignity of a borrower also. So this is basically a very good balance where Islam puts rights of everybody. And I think that as a Muslim, we need to follow them regardless of the institutional pressure or regardless of the legal pressure or any other pressure, because we are Muslim all the time. It's not like when we are imposed, we have to be Muslim. And if we are not imposed by any other authority, then we are not Muslim. So basically, this is the culture we want to cultivate through awareness and financial literacy.
Thank you.
If I may add, like in one comment, now this is very crucial because fintech in general, if you want to take specific example, buy now, pay later, all those kind of product or schemes, it's really make it very easy for the people to get in debt. So this is very important. This is actually where it's very important for those kind of financial literacy for the people.
Yeah, agree. One final question. Islamic Fintech for inclusion and shared prosperity, is it best delivered by startups or established financial companies or institutions? Any takers?
All right. Coming from a startup. So yeah, so we do like, address these issues and, provide solutions. In fact, last year we launched zakat.com. And, a lot of products that we like to add into the platform. But, we see that, I know people do have the expectations that, okay, when the product coming in or a new innovation should come from startups. Well, but we see like more and more corporate companies are taking that responsibility as well. Of course, from yourself, coming from the bank, also, there's always this mindset of like, how should we address this? And it's interesting that we see now it's not just startups collaborate with startups, but now startups collaborate with corporate companies, with banks to really address this. And now a lot of corporates are more open to collaborate with startups. So I'm just so happy to hear that Bank Islam also work with a startup called POC. So now, we're opening that opportunities to collaborate, not just, collaborate, but how do we make this a very strategic partnership in the coming years. So yeah, it's just not just, on the startup shoulders, but now we have, a support from the corporate, but also from the government themselves. Like, for example, like, we introduced, because of COVID, that there's a Penjana initiative and e-Penjana initiative being distributed through products like, e-wallets. I remember like before COVID, we had e-Tunai Rakyat, where we, we provide incentives to the citizens who are, middle and low income users that use e-wallet. So we provided like X amount of ringgit to the users. And it's amazing, like now government is using all these fintech platforms or e-wallets to do that, like to distribute those incentives to the citizens. So it's interesting to see, like, soon maybe zakat can be distributed that way. We don't know. Like, maybe that's an idea. Maybe we can think of like how we should do that. Like, collaboration is key here. For sure.
That's right. I think the key is collaboration and effective mobilization. With that, we have reached the end of our session. Thank you. On behalf of Securities Commission, I wish to thank our esteemed panelists, Dr. Kinan, Ms. Ain, Dr. Farouk, for your valuable insights on this topic. I would really love to catch up with you another time. Our heartfelt appreciation also goes out to you, the audience. Thank you for joining us at the SCxSC Fintech Conference 2021, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.